Heading into week 2 of the fantasy football season, here's a few kickers I've looked at on waivers. So obviously, I don't like adding kickers straight off the wire, but once they clear waivers after Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, these are guys I've looked to add. So the first guy is Dustin Hopkins of the Washington football team. So Hopkins I had as a sleeper here heading into week 1, and he had a good ball game versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Was Hopkins. He hit a 30-yarder and two 40-plus yarders with a PAT in that ball game. So next week he's got a good matchup versus the New York Giants, where I think he'll have many opportunities for a few field goals and possibly some extra points as well as Hopkins. We know he's an accurate kicker. He's been good now the last season and a half here for this Washington football team. So if you need some kicker help, I think Hopkins can make a few plays and get some things going. And right now he's available in 94% of fantasy leagues, and I've looked at him. The next kick I've looked at is Joey Sly this week here of the Houston Texans. So Joey Sly, he got cut a few weeks ago in training camp by the Carolina Panthers, and the Texans got rid of Ka'im Fairbairn and added Joey Sly to the mix here. And right now he's available in 100% of fantasy leagues, and Joey Sly had a good week 1 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars with 2 field goals from the 20 to the 29 range and a 40 to 49 range field goal with 4 PATs. So right here, I believe this Houston Texan team, they're not going to have a good season. They're going to have to settle for a lot of field goals, in my opinion. And they're just going to be a tough team to have tough time scoring and getting beat down in the red zone. So right here, Joey Sly, next week he has a tougher matchup at the Cleveland Browns. But I could see in that ball game, the Browns holding down this offense of the Houston Texans to only a few points, and obviously only field goal attempts possibly as well. So Joey Sly, we know he's got a decent history of kicking long field goals, even though last season he struggled with the Panthers. But so far in his first week here with the Houston Texans, he looked pretty good. The next kicker is McPherson of the Cincinnati Bengals. So what a debut it was for McPherson, winning the ball game in overtime for the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Minnesota Vikings. So a nice underdog victory. And McPherson in that ball game, a 30 to 39 yarder he hit, and a 53-yarder with 3 PATs. So right now McPherson's available in 97% of fantasy leagues. And next week he's got a matchup at the Chicago Bears, where I think the Cincinnati Bengals, they could get in a lot of field goal chances and held down in the red zone as well, because I think the Chicago Bears is a pretty good defense who could still hold teams down, even though they had a tougher time in week 1 versus the Los Angeles Rams. But right here, next week, I think there's going to be more opportunities for Evan McPherson. And this Cincinnati Bengal offense is pretty decent, in my opinion, and he's going to get a decent amount of chances this season. The next kick I looked at is Nick Folk of the New England Patriots. So right here, this New England Patriot house offense, it's been over the last few years before Tom Brady left last season. And Nick Folk, he had a good week 1 versus the Miami Dolphins, hitting a 20 to a 29-yarder, a 30 to 39-yarder, and a 40 to 49-yarder with an extra point in that one. And next week he's got a matchup at the New York Jets, where I think he's going to have 3 or 4 opportunities once again to kick a field goal or obviously hit a few extra points, depending the way that ball games go. But I think Nick Folk, each and every week, he's pretty much guaranteed for 2 or 3 attempts, because I don't think this Patriot offense is going to punch the ball into the end zone a lot like it has years prior. And right now, like I mentioned, Folk, he's available in 97% of fantasy leagues. And the 5th and final kick I looked at on waivers heading into week 2 is Aldrich Rojas of the New Orleans Saints. So Rojas, he had a good debut with the New Orleans Saints, and this guy was an all-star a few seasons ago with the New York Giants for the kicker. And right now he's available in 100% of fantasy leagues. So he had 5 PATs in week 1 versus the Packers, and he hit a 43-yarder in that ball game as well. So right here, he's on a pretty good offense that's going to get a lot of opportunities. Will Lutz is hurt, and there's no timetable for his return. So Rojas, we know he could kick the ball from long range, and Will Lutz, he's on the short-term IR. So right here, if you're in a big pinch and need a kicker, I think Rojas is a decent add with him on a decent offense and with a pretty good matchup next week at the Carolina Panthers. So that's a few kickers I've looked at on the waiver wire here into week 2 of the fantasy football season.